I glanced around the dimly lit bar, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of stale beer. My eyes settled on Carter, my older brother, sitting across from me, his expression one of pure joy as he gazed at his new wife, Elsie. She was gorgeous, no doubt about it, with her long blonde hair and striking blue eyes, but something about her made me uneasy. "She's perfect, isn't she?" Carter gushed, his hand resting on top of Elsie's. "I can't believe how lucky I am." I forced a smile, not wanting to dampen his excitement. "She's certainly beautiful." Elsie leaned forward, her red lips curling into a coy smile. "Ah, thanks, Layla. You're too kind." My husband Ethan chimed in from beside me. "She's a real stunner, that's for sure. You hit the jackpot, bro." I shot him a sideways glance, but he seemed oblivious to my discomfort, his eyes lingering a little too long on Elsie's exposed cleavage. As the night wore on, Ethan's comments about Elsie's appearance only became more frequent and more overt. "Damn, Elsie, you're just too hot for words." Carter laughed it off, but I could see the hint of unease in Elsie's eyes. I decided to confront Ethan later when we were alone. On the drive home, I turned to him, my jaw clenched. "What the hell was that back there?" He shrugged nonchalantly. "What? I was just giving the new sister-in-law a few compliments. It was inappropriate and disrespectful." I snapped, to both me and Carter. Ethan's face hardened. "Relax, Layla. It was harmless flirting. Doesn't mean anything." I shook my head, my stomach churning with a sickening sense of dread. If only I had known then how prophetic those words would turn out to be. The first few months after Elsie joined our family were relatively uneventful. Carter seemed blissfully happy, and I tried to push aside my lingering doubts about his new wife. That is, until I started noticing Ethan's strange behavior. It began with him working late nights more frequently, claiming he had important projects to complete. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I noticed him constantly checking his phone with a silly grin on his face whenever he received a text message. "Who are you texting all the time?" I asked one evening as we sat watching TV. Ethan quickly pocketed his phone. "Just some guys from work, babe. No big deal." I knew he was lying, but I decided not to press the issue further, at least not yet. A few weeks later, we attended a family barbecue at my parents' house. Carter seemed unusually subdued, confiding in me that the stress from his job was taking a toll on his health. "I'm worried about Elsie, too," he sighed. "She's been feeling isolated, stuck at home all day while I'm at work." My eyes drifted over to where Elsie was standing, laughing animatedly as Ethan whispered something in her ear. A familiar pang of jealousy twisted in my gut. Later that evening, I witnessed a moment that would forever shatter my trust in Ethan. We were getting ready to leave when I noticed him pull Elsie aside, his hand lingering on the small of her back as he leaned in close. Too close. I confronted him about it in the car, my voice shaking with rage. "What the hell was that back there with Elsie?" Ethan scoffed. "You're overreacting, Layla. She had something stuck in her hair, and I was just trying to get it out for her." I wanted to believe him, but the sick feeling in my stomach told me otherwise. From that moment on, I knew something was happening between my husband and my sister-in-law, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. The news about Carter's illness hit us like a ton of bricks. He had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer, and the prognosis wasn't good. As our family rallied around him, I found myself keeping a closer eye on Ethan and Elsie, searching for any sign of impropriety. At first, Elsie played the devoted wife, doting on Carter and promising to take care of him every step of the way. But I couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that her concern was merely an act. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I heard Ethan's phone buzz with a new message. He must have forgotten it on the kitchen counter. Against my better judgment, I glanced at the screen and felt my heart drop into my stomach. It was a text from an unknown number, accompanied by a suggestive photo of a scantily clad woman lying on a bed. The message read, "Can't wait to see you again, handsome." I confronted Ethan later that night, thrusting the phone in his face. "Care to explain this?" His eyes widened, and he snatched the phone from my hand. "It's not what it looks like, Layla. I swear." "Then what is it, Ethan?" "Because it sure as hell looks like you're cheating on me." He shook his head adamantly. "It's just some spam text, babe. You know how those things can be." I wasn't buying it, not for a second. But before I could press further, he stormed out of the room, leaving me alone with my suspicions and a sinking feeling that the truth was far darker than I could have imagined. In the days that followed, I became obsessed with finding concrete evidence of Ethan's infidelity. I scoured his phone records, laptop, and even his car, desperately searching for any clue that would confirm my worst fears. And then, one fateful afternoon, I found it. Hidden in the trunk of Ethan's car was an old burner phone, and when I turned it on, my heart nearly stopped. The phone was filled with explicit messages and photos exchanged between Ethan and Elsie, leaving no doubt about the nature of their betrayal. I confronted Ethan again, this time brandishing the burner phone as indisputable proof. But even then, he denied everything, insisting it was all a misunderstanding, a cruel joke played by someone out to get us. I didn't believe a word of it, but I had no choice but to play along for the time being. After all, with Carter's health hanging by a thread, the last thing our family needed was more turmoil. But mark my words, I vowed to myself I would make them pay for what they'd done, no matter what it took. Carter's condition continued to deteriorate, the cancer ravaging his body despite the aggressive treatments. As a family, we did our best to remain positive, but the writing was on the wall. In the end, Carter lost his battle, passing away surrounded by his loved ones. The days leading up to his wake were a blur of grief and anger. I could hardly stand to be in the same room as Ethan and Elsie, knowing the depth of their betrayal. And yet, they had the audacity to act like nothing was amiss, clinging to each other as they mourned the man they had so callously deceived. During the wake itself, I couldn't help but notice the odd distance between Ethan and Elsie. Gone were the covert glances and lingering touches that had first aroused my suspicion. Instead, they seemed almost cold toward one another, their interactions stiff and formal. It was in that moment that the truth became crystal clear. Their affair had been nothing more than a tawdry fling, fueled by lust and selfishness. With Carter gone, they had no reason to maintain the charade any longer. The realization made my blood boil, but I forced myself to remain calm, biding my time until the opportunity for vengeance presented itself. That opportunity came at the end of the wake when I overheard Elsie speaking in hushed tones on her phone. "I know, it's been so hard putting on this act," she whispered. "But now that Carter's gone, we can finally be together, just like we planned." My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped out from the shadows, burner phone in hand. "You mean like how you planned to betray my brother and destroy our family?" I spat, my voice dripping with venom. Elsie's eyes went wide with panic as she realized she'd been caught. "Layla, I can explain," but I didn't give her the chance. With a few taps on the burner phone, I pulled up the damning evidence of her affair with Ethan, the explicit messages, the photos, all of it laid bare. "Save it," I growled. "I know exactly what you two did, and I have all the proof I need right here." Elsie opened her mouth to protest, but the words died on her lips as Ethan appeared, his face pale as a ghost. In that moment, I knew I held all the power. These two snakes had slithered their way into our family, poisoning it from the inside with their lies and deceit. But no more. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions, once and for all. With the evidence of Ethan and Elsie's affair laid bare, I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let them wriggle their way out of this, not after the pain and humiliation they had caused our family. It was time for them to face the consequences. The next day, I sent out a group text to our extended family, inviting them to a memorial gathering at my house. I framed it as an opportunity to come together and celebrate Carter's life, but my true intentions were far more sinister. As our guests began to arrive, I couldn't help but notice the uneasy glances Ethan and Elsie kept shooting each other. They knew something was up, but they had no idea what was in store. Once everyone had settled in, I cleared my throat and stood up, the burner phone clutched tightly in my hand. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice trembling ever so slightly. "As you know, we're here to honor the memory of my dear brother, Carter." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. However, before we do that, there's something else that needs to be addressed. Ethan and Elsie exchanged a nervous look, and I could practically hear their hearts pounding. "For months, I've been living a lie," I continued, my gaze boring into theirs. A lie perpetrated by two people who were supposed to be part of this family, my husband, Ethan, and my sister-in-law, Elsie. A collective gasp rippled through the room, and I saw my mother's eyes widen with dawning horror. Ethan and Elsie have been carrying on an affair, I said, my voice rising with barely contained rage. An affair that began while my brother was still alive, sick and vulnerable. I held up the burner phone, the damning evidence displayed for all to see. I have proof, explicit messages, photos, all of it. They betrayed us in the worst possible way, and now it's time for them to face the consequences. The room fell deathly silent, everyone's eyes fixed on the two cheaters, whose faces had drained of all color. Finally, my mother spoke up, her voice shaking with fury. "How could you?" she spat, glaring at Ethan and Elsie. "How could you do this to our family?" She turned to me, her expression a mixture of sorrow and pride. "Layla, I'm so sorry you had to go through this, but you did the right thing by exposing them." Then, her gaze hardening, she addressed the two betrayers once more. "You are no longer welcome here. I want you both out of our lives for good." Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but my mother cut him off with a stern glare. "Don't bother trying to explain yourselves. Your actions speak louder than any words ever could." As Ethan and Elsie slunk out of the house, their heads hanging in shame, I felt a sense of bittersweet triumph. The battle had been won, but at what cost? Our family had been torn apart, our trust shattered beyond repair. But in that moment, as I looked around at the faces of my loved ones, the ones who truly mattered, I knew that we would persevere. We would rebuild, stronger and wiser than before. And Ethan and Elsie? They would have to live with the consequences of their actions, forever branded as the ones who betrayed their own flesh and blood. In the days following the explosive reveal, Ethan tried to reach out to me, pleading for a chance to explain himself. But I wasn't having any of it. "Layla, please," he begged over the phone, his voice thick with desperation. "Just hear me out. It wasn't what it looked like." I scoffed, my grip tightening around the receiver. "Save it, Ethan. I don't want to hear your lies anymore." "But I love you," he insisted. "What Elsie and I had, it was just a fling, a moment of weakness. It didn't mean anything." "It meant everything," I shot back, my anger boiling over. "You betrayed me. You betrayed Carter, your own brother, how could you do that to our family?" There was a long pause, and for a moment I thought he might actually take responsibility for his actions. But then, in typical Ethan fashion, he tried to shift the blame. "Elsie, she came on to me," he stammered. "She was so lonely, and Carter was always working. It just happened." I let out a bitter laugh. "You're unbelievable, you know that? Always finding someone else to blame for your mistakes." "Layla, please, I'm sorry," he pleaded. "I'll do anything to make it up to you. Just give me another chance." But I had heard enough. "It's too late for that, Ethan. I want a divorce." The words hung in the air like a death sentence, and for a moment there was only silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't mean that." "I've never been more serious in my life," I replied, my resolve unwavering. "It's over, Ethan. For good." As I hung up the phone, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. The weight of his betrayal had been lifted, and for the first time in months, I could breathe again. But my reprieve was short-lived, as Elsie soon came knocking at my door, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "Layla, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. I crossed my arms and glared at her. "I have nothing to say to you." "Please, just hear me out," she begged. "What happened between me and Ethan? It was a mistake, a horrible, stupid mistake." She took a deep breath, her eyes pleading with me for understanding. "I was so lonely, and Carter was always working. Ethan was there, and he made me feel wanted, desired, but it didn't mean anything, I swear." I shook my head in disgust. "You're pathetic, you know that? Using loneliness as an excuse to betray my brother, who loved you more than anything in this world." Elsie flinched as if I had slapped her. "I know, and I'll never forgive myself for what I did. But please, you have to believe me when I say it's over between me and Ethan. It was just a fling, a moment of weakness." But her words fell on deaf ears. In my eyes, she was no better than Ethan, a snake who had wormed her way into our family only to poison it from the inside. "Save your excuses," I spat. "I don't want to hear them. Just stay the hell away from me and my family." With that, I slammed the door in her face, leaving her to wallow in the mess she had created. As for me, I was done. Done with the lies, done with the betrayal. It was time to move on and start piecing my life back together, one shattered fragment at a time. With the truth about Ethan and Elsie's affair laid bare, the fallout was swift and merciless. I wasted no time filing for divorce, citing infidelity as the grounds for terminating our marriage. As for Ethan, he found himself ostracized from both his personal and professional circles. News of the scandal spread like wildfire, and suddenly, Ethan's once stellar reputation was in tatters. His colleagues at the law firm where he worked couldn't seem to look him in the eye anymore, and whispers followed him wherever he went. It didn't take long for the consequences to trickle down to his career. One day, he was called into his boss's office, emerging with a grim expression on his face. "They demoted me," he confided later, his voice laced with shame. "Said my behavior reflected poorly on the firm, and they couldn't have someone so untrustworthy in a position of authority." I felt a pang of satisfaction at the news. After everything he had put me through, it was only fitting that he should suffer the consequences of his actions. But as much as I wanted to revel in Ethan's downfall, a part of me couldn't help but feel sorry for him. He had thrown away everything, his marriage, his family, his career, all for a fleeting affair with a woman who didn't even seem to care about him. Speaking of Elsie, she didn't fare much better in the aftermath of the scandal. With Carter gone and Ethan's financial situation in shambles, he could no longer afford to support her lavish desires. Without a steady stream of income to bankroll her extravagant lifestyle, she quickly found herself cast aside, just another discarded plaything in Ethan's wake. I caught a glimpse of her one day, wandering aimlessly down the street, her once pristine appearance disheveled and worn. She looked lost, a far cry from the confident, alluring woman who had so effortlessly seduced my husband. A small part of me felt a twinge of pity for her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the lingering resentment I felt towards her betrayal. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it, alone, forgotten, and utterly irrelevant. As for me, I tried my best to move on with my life, to leave the pain and heartache of Ethan's infidelity behind me, but it was easier said than done. The scars of his betrayal ran deep, and no matter how hard I tried, they never seemed to fully heal. Still, I persisted, determined to rebuild my life one day at a time. I threw myself into my work, found solace in the company of friends and family who had stuck by me through it all. And in the quiet moments when the memories of Ethan's deceit threatened to overwhelm me, I would remind myself of one simple truth. I was the victor in this battle, not him. He had lost everything. His wife, his respect, his dignity, and for what? A cheap fling that had ultimately amounted to nothing. In the end, the only person who had emerged from this ordeal with their integrity intact was me. And that, perhaps, was the greatest revenge of all. The day my divorce from Ethan was finalized, I felt a bittersweet sense of relief. On one hand, it marked the end of a chapter in my life that had been marred by betrayal and heartbreak. But on the other, it also represented a new beginning, a chance to start over and rebuild myself from the ashes of my shattered marriage. As I walked out of the courthouse, the weight of Ethan's infidelity finally lifting from my shoulders, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come. Just a few months earlier, my world had been turned upside down, my trust in the person I loved most utterly shattered. But through it all, I had remained strong, resolute in my determination to see justice served and my family's honor restored. And in the end, I had emerged victorious, while Ethan and Elsie were left to contend with the consequences of their actions. Still, as satisfying as their downfall had been, I knew that dwelling on their misfortunes would only serve to poison my own spirit. It was time to let go of the anger and resentment that had consumed me for so long, and instead focus on forging a new path for myself. With that in mind, I made a decision, one that would not only honor the memory of my dear brother Carter, but also help others who had experienced the same heartbreak and betrayal that I had. I used a portion of my divorce settlement to establish a foundation in Carter's name, dedicated to providing support and resources for individuals and families dealing with the aftermath of infidelity. It was my way of turning my pain into something positive, of ensuring that no one else would have to suffer in silence as I once had. As word of the foundation spread, I was inundated with messages of support and gratitude from people who had been touched by similar tragedies. Their stories were heartbreaking, but also inspiring, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable hurt. And slowly but surely, as I immersed myself in this new purpose, I began to heal. The wounds left by Ethan's betrayal may never fully disappear, but they no longer defined me. I was more than just a scorned wife. I was a survivor, a fighter, and a beacon of hope for those still struggling to find their way. Of course, there were moments when the past would come creeping back, threatening to undo all the progress I had made. Like the day Ethan showed up on my doorstep, his eyes pleading with me for forgiveness. "Layla, please," he begged, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I can never make up for what I did, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I was a fool, a selfish idiot who threw away the best thing in his life for a cheap thrill." I regarded him coolly, unflinching in the face of his remorse. "I appreciate your apology, Ethan, but it's too little, too late," he nodded, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I understand. He trailed off, shaking his head. "I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me someday." "Forgiveness isn't for you," I replied, my voice steady and resolute. "It's for me, and I've already forgiven you, if only to free myself from the weight of your betrayal." With that, I turned my back on him, leaving him to contend with the wreckage of his own making. As for me, I had a new life to build, one that was stronger, brighter, and infinitely more fulfilling than anything I could have imagined before. The road ahead might be long and winding, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I was a survivor, a warrior, and most importantly, the master of my own destiny. And nothing, not even the ghost of Ethan's infidelity, would ever hold me back again.
When you heard the name of my company, you were probably so surprised that you were unable to speak. I organized this reunion in order to hold this man accountable. Joe was the leader of the group who teased and harassed me throughout middle school. I couldn't put up with him being superior to me, even after we were reunited as adults. I changed from who I was before. "So, which branch are you in?" "Branch? What do you mean?" "Obviously, I'm in the U.S. branch because I'm American." "So you're not at headquarters then? Are you boasting that you work in a branch office?" Joe hesitated for a second at my answer. "What? Where do you work then?" I flashed my teeth and smirked at him. This marks the start of my major return. I'm Ken Carter, and I'm 32 years old. My classmates and I used to study together at Lincoln Middle School. It has been 17 years since I graduated at the age of 15. I now reside abroad, but I visited my hometown for the first time in a long time. Since you need a car to get anywhere in this area, I drove quickly through the streets I knew well, returning to the spots where I used to hang out. The roads were smooth and pleasant to drive on because they were well paved. A big edifice appeared as I swung the driving wheel and turned a bend. The words Lincoln Middle School shone prominently next to the great entrance. I parked in the lot reserved for guests and teachers. I went outside, past the gym, and went into the school building where I used to study. Since I had been here, everything had changed. The grounds were kept up well, and the school had a comprehensive renovation. I could hear students excitedly rehearsing for their sports teams when the sun was still high in the sky. I questioned whether they were having fun in middle school. I visited my former homeroom teacher, Sam Harrison, who is currently the senior year head teacher, in the faculty room after perusing the classrooms. Several teachers were occupied at their workstations, despite the fact that it was a Friday afternoon. It must be difficult. I felt a little sorry for them. Sam smiled and got to his feet as soon as he spotted me. I pretended to be someone paying a visit to a long-time, beloved mentor. There were no problems because I had already informed him that I would be arriving today. Tomorrow, I'm heading to the United States. Before that, I wanted to see Joe and the others, so I decided to hold a little reunion in one of the classrooms. That sounds fine. You are welcome to utilize the area. These days, The third-floor classrooms are unoccupied since there are fewer students. That meant I could say whatever I wanted without holding back. I couldn't help but smile. Even Sam had gotten older. He had graduated from this middle school, gone on to the top high school in the state, and then attended a university in the city. He studied education and, upon graduation, returned to his alma mater as a teacher. In his very first year as a teacher, he became our homeroom teacher. This really brings back memories. Haven't you been in the U.S. much? No, I've been living overseas the whole time. Coming back after so long, I was shocked by how much has changed. I remember you six were always close. You were always messing around in the hallways, making noise. I still remember it clearly. Hearing that made my body stiffen. If he remembered so clearly, why didn't he do anything? Calling it being close or just goofing around? What exactly was he watching? And this man is the senior year head teacher now? Are the current students having a good school life under him? Back in middle school, I didn't know anything about life. I still had the mindset of an elementary schooler, believing that adults were naturally superior and that kids had to obey them. But now I understand that even teachers have strengths and weaknesses. The reality is, after finishing college, they go straight into teaching without ever experiencing the real world. Maybe Sam had genuinely tried to be a good teacher in his own way. But does that make my resentment disappear? In a few days, the State Education Board will receive evidence of Sam having an affair with a student's mother. What happens after that is none of my concern. I'll be on a flight out of here tomorrow. I made my way to the third-floor classroom where I once spent time with my classmates. With my left leg not moving the way I wanted, even just climbing up a middle school staircase to the third floor was quite the struggle. When I stepped into the classroom and absent-mindedly gazed out the window, Joe walked in, with that same smug, nasty grin as always. He looked at me and said, "Hey, long time no see. You haven't changed a bit. Still got that dumb look on your face." I'm not sure if I still look the same as I did 17 years ago, but Joe has changed a lot. Even though he's only 32, his belly sticks out, and he's balding on top. Back in the day, there were girls who used to swoon over him, but I'm sure they'd be disappointed now. It's been a while. I'm glad to see you. I forced a smile as I said something I didn't mean. I have nothing but bad memories of Joe. He was the golden boy of our class, the leader among the boys, with his 4 henchmen, Tom, Jack, Dave, and Mike. He bullied anyone he didn't like, and he did it in a way that made it look like we were just messing around whenever a teacher was watching. During breaks, they would drag me into the hallway, jab me with mops, hold me down, and kick me in the stomach. Our homeroom teacher, Sam, and every other teacher saw Joe as their favorite student. Seriously, what were they even looking at? I heard footsteps coming up the stairs, and soon the rest of them appeared. It was Tom, Jack, Dave, and Mike. The teachers always thought we were part of the same friend group. As soon as they saw Joe, they greeted him with nostalgia. "Joe, long time no see. You've put on even more weight since last time." Yeah, being in sales means lots of client dinners. I've been to almost every top restaurant in the city. That sounds great. You should take us sometime. We go way back, after all. From what I remember, Joe, Tom, and Jack all left town when they went to college. Meanwhile, Dave and Mike stayed local, attending university here. "Have you 5 kept in touch since middle school?" I asked. "Yeah, we all went to different high schools, so we've barely seen each other." "Well, we all went to pretty good universities, but that's no surprise. We've always been special." Jack's words made me let out a dry laugh. Did they really think being special meant they could do whatever they wanted? Joe was the one who fixated on tormenting me, but Tom and Jack weren't much better. Dave and Mike just followed along, hoping to stay on Joe's good side. Back in middle school, Joe was dazzling to everyone, Both guys and girls admired him. Tom and Jack saw themselves as Joe's closest friends. Dave and Mike idolized him and followed him around. And me? I was nothing more than a punching bag for their amusement. I had hoped that after middle school, they had struggled a little in life and gained some empathy. If they had acknowledged their past and apologized, I was willing to forgive them. But instead, they all started bragging about their careers. Actually, Mike and I started a business together. It's tough, but being our own bosses is worth it. Dave and I have been tight since middle school. We get along great. And since we both stayed in town, we make the perfect business partners. Joe barely paid attention to their conversation, staring out the window instead. He was probably waiting for someone to ask about him. Hearing about other people's success wasn't exactly his favorite topic. With no one else bringing it up, I decided to do it myself. So, Joe, what are you up to these days? All I know is that you went to college in the city. Joe's eyes lit up. He grinned, clearly thrilled that someone had finally asked. Well, I work at Ford Pharmaceuticals. I've been at the top of my division since I joined, and I'm on track to become a manager soon. Tom and Jack, who already knew, nodded and smiled proudly. Meanwhile, Dave and Mike, who had stayed in town, looked surprised. Seriously? That's amazing. I just read that the company's French headquarters has started full-scale research on a potential cancer cure. It's all over the news. Joe, you're working for an incredible company. Joe nodded smugly at their praise. Then he looked at me, who didn't respond to anything. You must be shocked hearing my company name, huh? So stunned you can't even speak. The whole reason I planned this reunion was to knock him down a peg. Back in middle school, Joe led the charge in tormenting me. Even now, as adults, he still looks down on me, and I refuse to tolerate it any longer. I am not the same person I was back then. So, which branch are you at? I asked. What do you mean? I'm American, so obviously, I work in the U.S. branch. So you're not at headquarters. You really think working in a branch office is worth bragging about? Joe hesitated at my remark, looking flustered. Then where do you work? He asked. I flashed a confident grin, baring my teeth. This is where my comeback begins. I work at the same company as you, Ford Pharmaceuticals, but not at the U.S. branch. I've never seen you around the office, Joe muttered. That's because I work at the French headquarters. That's why we've never run into each other. Joe and the others were completely stunned when they heard I worked at the headquarters of a world-famous multinational corporation. If they found out I was actually on the executive board, their jaws might just hit the floor. Enjoying the moment, I took my time looking at each of their dumbfounded faces. This was exactly why I had invited them back to our old school. I wanted to see these clueless expressions up close. Tom, who was the closest to Joe, finally spoke up. Hey, why are we even here right now? Joe, you sent me an email about a great investment opportunity, saying we should meet up since we'd all be back home for the holidays. Same here. I live near the city, so I figured this was a rare chance to catch up with everyone. And from what I heard, Joe's been making a fortune off investments and living the high life. What? I never sent any emails. Joe snapped. I got a message from Dave saying he and Mike started a business and made a killing in investments. That's why I came, Tom added. Dave and Mike both shouted at the same time. Same here. The five of them exchanged wary glances, suspicion growing on their faces. Being summoned back to their old high school by an email none of them actually sent. It was only natural that they'd be confused. I smirked, amused by their reactions. Well, of course. That's because I was the one who sent those emails. You used my name to trick them into coming here. So it wasn't Dave who called me. It was you. Joe asked, his voice sharp. That's right. I figured investment would be the perfect bait for you. And I also happen to know each of you has your own little problems right now. None of them could understand why I had gathered them here in this classroom. But for me, this was the only place where I could settle things once and for all. Back in middle school, I suffered endlessly under their bullying and harassment. The only thing that kept me going was the thought that once I graduated, I could finally escape from them. But just before graduation, during one of their so-called wrestling matches, they injured my spine. The left side of my body was paralyzed, and I could barely leave my house. I couldn't even attend my own graduation. It was one of the lowest points of my life. I had to take a year off from the high school I was supposed to attend, spending that time seeing doctor after doctor. Eventually, a doctor in New York recommended treatment abroad, so my parents and I moved to France. I endured 3 major surgeries and managed to regain my ability to walk, though some paralysis remained in my left leg. While still in the hospital, I transferred to a local high school in France and continued my studies there. Technically, I should have graduated a year later than my peers, but I took advantage of an accelerated program and ended up in the workforce at the same time as everyone else. I landed a job at one of the world's top pharmaceutical companies, Ford Pharmaceuticals, and quickly built a strong track record. Having spent so much time in hospitals, I deeply understood both the doctor's desire to heal and the patient's desperate hopes for a cure. I worked with that perspective every day, and eventually, Adam Ford, the CEO himself, took notice of me. Adam had a habit of giving what seemed like impossible assignments, but I always found a way to accomplish them. At one point, I even traveled to African nations where medicine was hard to come by, working alongside volunteers and makeshift clinics. All my efforts paid off, and last year, I was finally promoted to the executive board. Then, by pure chance, I discovered that Joe, my old tormentor, was working at the U.S. branch. For a moment, I wondered if he had changed, but when I spoke to people at the American office, I found out he was still the same, bullying those who were weaker than him. When I heard that, my anger boiled over. From that moment on, I swore I would make him pay. I contacted the U.S. branch director and got my hands on Joe's company profile. His company email address was listed there, so I used it to carry out my plan. I also started looking into what had happened to Joe after high school. He had gone on to a state high school known for its strong sports program, where he lived his best life playing soccer. While I was suffering in a hospital, he was busy chasing a ball, even making it to the national tournament in his senior year. He got a sports scholarship to a private university in New York, but life didn't go as smoothly as he expected. Even though he played soccer for all 4 years, he never made the starting lineup once. His grades weren't great either, but an older teammate who took a liking to him secretly helped him get through. When he landed a job at Ford Pharmaceuticals, his parents acted like they had won the lottery. To be fair, in terms of making them happy, he was a model son. If he had just focused on his job, he probably would have climbed the corporate ladder and continued making his parents proud. But then came a problem. He got caught up in the recent investment craze and poured a huge amount of money into it. That was his weak spot. That's why I set up this whole investment scheme to lure him here. While tracking Joe, I also dug into what the other 4 were up to. Tom had gone to the same high school as Joe, but wanted to move to the city, so he attended a private university in New York. His family ran a large liquor store back home, and his parents had hoped he would take over the business. But Tom had completely adapted to city life and never returned home, instead landing a job at a major trading company. Up to this point, Tom's life had been going smoothly, but in his 3rd year at the company, he faced a major setback. His biggest workplace rival married the boss's daughter. From that point on, his rival kept getting promotions and is now at the head of the sales department at the corporate headquarters. On the other hand, while Tom was part of the flashy sales department, I heard he was constantly brushed aside by his rival and struggling in his daily work. Jack, who was especially close to Joe and Tom, had hit a roadblock when applying to high school. He had studied hard to get into the same school as the 2 of them, But on the day of the interview, he came down with a terrible cold and failed. In the end, he attended a private backup school and spent relatively fulfilling years there. As one of Joe's devoted followers, Jack was determined to follow the same path. He took a year off to reapply and finally got into the same university and department as Joe. However, Joe didn't see the friendship the same way Jack did. Since Jack was now a year behind, they barely took any classes together. Even when Jack went to support Joe at soccer games, Joe rarely played. Over time, Joe started avoiding Jack, and their friendship faded. Back in middle school, Jack believed that he, Joe, and Tom shared a special bond, but Joe never thought of Jack as that important. When Jack received an email from Joe this time, he was probably overjoyed. When I sent the message, he even replied with a long email full of gratitude. I was actually looking forward to seeing his reaction once he realized the truth. Now that I was watching it unfold, Jack looked more than just disappointed. He was genuinely in shock. Serves him right. Tracking what happened to Dave and Mike was even easier. Neither of them had ever left town. Unlike Joe and the others who moved to the city, these two had lived completely different lives. Mike's family owned an auto repair shop. Born as the son of the owner, he grew up without any real struggles. However, he was never particularly bright, and his grades had been poor since middle school. He started high school, but since the school was full of rough students, he ended up transferring to an online high school. After that, he shut himself away at home for years. His parents and relatives were deeply worried about his future. That's when his old friend, Dave, reached out. He proposed that they pool their money together and start a business. More than Mike himself, it was his parents who jumped at the idea, funding the venture. Finally, there was Dave. His story was even more unique. Like Mike, he was never good at studying, but he came from a long line of city council members and was raised without many restrictions. He got into a decent high school, and out of the 5 of them, was the only one to attend a university in Spain. But it was more of a language study program, and it didn't give him much of an advantage when it came to finding a job. He landed a position at a well-known construction company, but quit after 3 years and drifted aimlessly for a while. Eventually, he was inspired by a college friend who had started a company and decided to do the same. He borrowed some money from his parents and pitched the idea to his old middle school buddy, Mike, who came from a wealthy family. Mike's parents, already anxious about their son's future, were even more enthusiastic about the idea than he was. That's how their company came to be. But from what I heard from people in the industry, they were barely staying afloat. That's why I used Joe's name to send them an email, pretending to offer an investment to support their business. Completely falling for it, Dave and Mike showed up at this reunion full of excitement. In the end, out of all of us, I was the one who had risen the highest. Compared to me, the rest of them were nothing but losers. I held back a laugh and calmly spoke. Sounds like life hasn't been too kind to you guys, Joe. Sorry to say, but I have no intention of investing in your plans. And I'm not going to fund Mike and Dave's company either. You can go ahead and fail on your own. So you knew we were all struggling and called us here anyway? You just wanted to rub it in our faces. That's exactly right. Tom and Jack seemed to be struggling at work, and I heard Mike and Dave poured a ton of money into their startup. But from what I hear, the industry doesn't expect them to last even a year. Serves you all right. Tom snarled, "You bastard," and lunged at me. Just then, a woman's voice called out from the other side of the classroom door. "What are you doing, Tom? Get away from Ken." "Olivia, glad you made it. We're done talking. Come on in." A stunning woman with long, flowing black hair stepped into the classroom. The 5 of them were visibly shocked when they heard me call her Olivia. "Wait, Olivia? You mean Olivia Miller from middle school?" "That's right, Joe. You've changed a lot." "Well, I guess it's been 17 years, so that's understandable." Back in middle school, Olivia was the girl we all admired. She was going to play a crucial role in today's reunion. When I explained my plan to her, she immediately responded, "Sounds fun," and agreed to help. Olivia and I actually reconnected about 3 years ago. At the time, I had already started thinking about this plan, but I hadn't considered involving her. After middle school, Olivia attended a prestigious all-girls private high school, part of an affiliated university. She continued there and studied American literature. Born into one of the most prominent families in the state, she was adored by her parents, but had never really developed a sense of independence. She had always assumed she would marry someone from a similarly wealthy background and become a housewife. In fact, after graduating college, she agreed to an arranged marriage her parents set up. But it didn't work out, and she ended up divorcing. She never had children, but apparently that didn't bother her in the slightest. My reunion with Olivia happened entirely by chance. I'd attended a New Year's party hosted by her grandfather, former Congressman Edward Miller, as a representative executive of Ford Pharmaceutical. When we saw each other again after so many years, we immediately hit it off. Once we realized we were both single, we naturally started thinking about our future. Since reconnecting with me, she began questioning the life she had lived following her parents' expectations and started actively engaging in society. Now she's part of a volunteer organization, dedicating her time to supporting single mothers. With the 5 of them looking shaken, I quietly spoke, "We're getting married soon." "How the hell did someone like you end up with Olivia?" "Oh my, I'd appreciate it if you didn't complain about my future husband." Olivia took my arm and leaned against me as the 5 of them stood there, stunned. At some point, the voices of the students had faded away. The sun had completely set, and I switched on the classroom lights. The cold blue glow of the LEDs illuminated our faces. Joe, in particular, looked even paler than when he first walked into the room. This middle school reunion, 17 years in the making, had turned into my long-awaited revenge. Leaving the 5 of them behind, I walked out of the school with Olivia by my side. Tomorrow, I would take her back with me to France. It would be a long time before I returned to the U.S. again. "Are you satisfied now?" "Yeah, completely. I can finally move forward with a fresh start." Olivia gently took my hand and pressed it against her cheek. Feeling her warmth, I decided to leave the past behind for good. I didn't curse them, but after that day, things only got worse for the 5 of them. Joe, who had been struggling with investments, made a desperate high-stakes gamble and lost everything. He even had to sell the house he had just bought. Tom, despite his rival being promoted to department head, failed at work and was demoted to a remote branch office. Jack's company went bankrupt due to financial troubles, leaving him unemployed and growing more anxious by the day. As expected, Mike and Dave's startup couldn't stay afloat, and they found themselves drowning in financial difficulties. And just like that, my long battle with Joe and his gang ended in complete victory. I returned to France with Olivia, and we started a new life in a luxury apartment in Paris. Olivia, who had been accustomed to luxury, had recently started finding joy in being frugal. On weekends, she made sandwiches, and we went to the park together. We never had any financial worries, but with the cost of living in Paris rising rapidly, it was nice to see our savings grow. If we had children in the future, we would be able to provide them with the best education. Today marked the 5th anniversary of my reunion with Olivia. While she hummed a tune, making sandwiches in the kitchen, I secretly picked up my phone and made a reservation at a high-end restaurant with a view of the Eiffel Tower. There are no costumes, every single one. I was momentarily unable to comprehend what was being stated. It was the World Dancing Championships last round. There was an emergency. Just before the show, all of the outfits for our dance team, which I oversaw as an administrator, vanished. 10 dancers were scheduled to perform. We couldn't possibly make new outfits in time. This is not good. It's just getting started. I noticed that the first teen was already on stage when I looked at the waiting room monitor. Some of the younger people started crying, and the personnel went into a frenzy. I could not allow them to lose in this manner. I'll buy us some time. Everyone looked at me in disbelief when I said it. They did, of course. I was an administrator, not a dancer. Give us some time. What exactly do you intend to do? Nothing. However, doing nothing is worse. They made the announcement. When the name of our team was called, everyone paused and looked nervously at the stage. Nobody stepped forward. I'll wait until you're ready. I strode toward the spotlight with resolve. I sensed that everyone in the audience was looking at me. Ryan is my name. I am employed at a renowned major dance school as an administrator. Although paperwork and front desk work are my primary responsibilities, I also update the website and record student lessons for marketing. I have quite a variety of duties. Ryan, update the schedule on the website, will you? One of my senior coworkers, Samantha, sent me a calendar with all of the forthcoming school functions and plays. One occurrence in particular, highlighted in strong red letters, stood out among them. World Dance is in 3 months. World Dance? Yes, the best team from our branch was eligible. The director, Mr. Carter, is ecstatic with the news that just arrived. This must be posted on the homepage as soon as possible. Make it the focal point of the other activities. Okay, so this is a pretty big competition. You're unaware of world dancing, Ryan. Every year, a world-renowned dance competition takes place in the United States. Samantha claims that the top performers in this competition get invitations to perform in other nations. I understand. I apologize. I didn't know anything about it. You work at a dance school full-time. You ought to be aware of these things. Yeah, you're right. And when you post it on the homepage, make sure you do some research on the competition too. Samantha moved away with an expression of mild exasperation. I'd assumed she must find it difficult to cope with a naive junior like me, but I dismissed it and went to work at my desk. As we entered World Dance, the entire school was a hive of activity. Mr. Carter and senior employees from the main office would occasionally stop by to observe the practice sessions and have thoughtful conversations with the dancers and trainers. I was tasked with filming all of this. The footage would be posted online as part of our promotional strategy. Just participating in a world-class dance competition was enough to attract attention in the industry. It was a way to increase exposure and draw in aspiring dancers. Since filming didn't require specialized dance knowledge, I was entrusted with the job. A logical decision, really. Day after day, I captured practice sessions in the school's atmosphere, edited the footage, and submitted it for review. I wasn't sure if this would continue until the competition, or if I'd be reassigned once we had enough footage. There was no way they'd send a mere administrator to travel and film the competition. The travel cost alone would be outrageous. As the World Dance Competition drew closer, just 2 months away, the atmosphere among the contestants became tense. Because of that, their formations started to fall apart, and careless mistakes became more frequent. They were slipping into a minor slump right before the big event. Sensing this, the coach called in someone from the main office. Her name was Emily. She was an exceptional producer overseeing various dance teams from headquarters. Not only was she highly knowledgeable about dance, but she also had a long-standing relationship with the coach. She had come to observe the scene and help the contestants break out of their slump. Since she was a producer, I expected a serious-looking person in a formal suit. But when I entered the studio with my filming equipment as usual, I saw a lively and stunning woman standing there. She had light brown hair tied in a ponytail and a tall, slender figure. Dressed in a t-shirt and track pants, she looked ready to coach in person. Yet, even in a plain white t-shirt, her sharp features made it look like high-end fashion. She was definitely a true professional. And another thing made her appearance even more striking. Her posture was flawless. Keeping a straight back at all times must have been tough, yet she never slouched or bent, even once during the lesson. Ryan, right? I'm Emily. Nice to meet you. Oh yeah, nice to meet you too. During the break, Emily approached me while I was reviewing the recorded footage. The staff told me you've been filming all the practices. I'd like to check out their past training sessions, their best moments, how they looked when they were in top shape. Do you mind showing me the footage? Of course, no problem. I led Emily to the office. She must have been tired too, yet she wasn't even taking a break. She really was full of energy, just like she looked. Here it is. I had organized the footage into folders by date on the computer. As I explained the conditions over time, I pointed out when the performance started to decline. Emily watched the videos with great interest. Someone at her level could probably notice things in these recordings that I wouldn't even realize. As I sorted through today's footage, I waited for her reaction. A few moments later, she let out a voice of admiration. This is incredible. These are really well shot. Huh. You filmed all of these yourself? Yeah, I did. Was she complimenting me, not the dancers? These clips, and these ones too. You have a great eye for capturing the best angles and timing. Well, I've been watching them dance for a while now. I do work for this company after all. It's more than that. The camera work, the timing, it's so good that I'm drawn in even without any editing. I appreciate that, but I do keep in mind that these are for promotional use. Maybe I have a little talent for video work. I laughed it off, but Emily didn't seem convinced. That may be true, but this footage, the parts where you filmed their freestyle practice, the voice giving them directions, that's you, isn't it? Yeah, that's me. It was from when I was filming individual introductions. I had each dancer stand in front of the camera and gave them simple instructions before having them dance for about a minute. Your directions were spot on. You know exactly what makes each of them shine and what their strengths are. I mean, I've been watching them for a few years now. Has no one ever pointed this out before? No, not really. That's right. Until Emily pointed it out, I had never been praised like this before. That's why I was so confused, and at the same time, unsettled. Ryan, had you ever danced before? No, not even once. I see. Emily asked me that out of nowhere then, without another word, went back to reviewing the footage. 2 months later, I was in the United States. I couldn't help but question how I ended up in this situation, but apparently, it was all thanks to Emily. She personally went to Mr. Carter and insisted, I want Ryan to handle the filming on the day of the competition. And without any hesitation, he agreed. It seemed like Mr. Carter had complete trust in Emily, and there was no reason to oppose her suggestion. Of course, they had also hired a professional cameraman, but Emily wanted to use my footage, not just for PR, but as material for future students at the school. With expectations that high, I had no choice but to take my job seriously. I stood in the corner of the waiting room, running a final check on my equipment. The competition was a 2-day event. On the first day, 20 teams would be narrowed down to just 4. Then, a week later, the final round would take place. Thanks to Emily's guidance, the team had overcome their slump. But just before their performance, they were radiating a sharp, tense energy. Not wanting to disturb anyone, I quietly slipped out of the waiting room and into the hallway. The hallways were bustling with people from all over the world. Some teams had already finished their performances, while others leaned against the walls, mentally preparing themselves. Even though I wasn't a contestant, I could feel the pressure in the air. It was enough to make me nervous. Amid the crowd, a familiar face was walking toward me. The moment our eyes met, I froze as if paralyzed. He, too, looked at me in disbelief. Ryan? No way, it's really you. Tyler. He was someone I knew. No, more than that. We had once pushed each other to our limits. What are you doing here? Don't tell me you're with one of the Japanese teams. I'm just an administrator at the school. I'm only here to film. Tyler had looked surprised at first, but upon hearing my answer, he exhaled sharply and laughed through his nose. Yeah, makes sense. No way you'd ever compete in world dance. You gave up and walked away from the stage. Thinking you could ever return would be pretty arrogant. I didn't want to have this conversation. I gave a vague nod, but Tyler frowned, clearly unimpressed with my reaction. You really have lost your edge. You're still competing, right? Obviously. You do know I'm part of an American team now, right? Yeah, I heard. I'm way beyond your level now. The fact that I'm standing here proves that. He looked around with pride. He must have been overwhelmed by the joy of standing on his dream stage. Of course, I understood. Well, make sure you film my performance too. You might learn something from it. Oh, wait. Never mind. You're just a washed-up coward who ran away. He gave me a light shove on the shoulder before walking away. I didn't want to watch him leave. Yet for some reason, maybe some lingering attachment, I turned around. But the person in my sight wasn't Tyler. It was Emily. Emily. Ryan, I was looking for you. Yeah, is it about the filming? That too. But was that Tyler just now? Tyler was a well-known dancer in Japan. It was no surprise that she recognized him. You two know each other. You seemed close, or at least like you've known each other a long time. Yeah, back in school. Wait, did you hear all that? A little. Judging by her expression, she had heard most of it. Still, she didn't press further and smoothly shifted the conversation back to business. And then, the moment arrived. The performance. Their routine was flawless. There was nothing to criticize. I was so absorbed in capturing their movements that I completely forgot about my earlier encounter with Tyler. The results were beyond expectations. Our team had placed first. No one had anticipated it, and in the waiting room, everyone was jumping for joy. To prepare for the finals in a week, we quickly returned to the hotel. As I was about to leave the venue, someone suddenly grabbed my arm, nearly making me stumble. Whoa. The one who had pulled me back was Tyler. He was glaring at me with clear frustration. I could already guess the reason. His team had also made it to the finals, but they had placed second. He clearly wasn't happy about it. How the hell did your team get first place while mine ended up second? I mean, you heard the judges' feedback, right? Besides, I'm not even competing, so I have nothing to do with it. Not that he expected any real answer from me. He was just looking for someone beneath him to vent his frustration on. And unfortunately, I was the perfect target. If I said anything about the skill difference, it would only make him angrier. As I tried to figure out how to escape the situation, someone came to my rescue. Ryan, I needed to talk to you about tomorrow. Oh, am I interrupting something? It was Emily. I thought she had already gone back to the hotel, but apparently she had been looking for me. No, not at all. Let's go. It was a bit forceful, but it gave me the perfect excuse to leave. Tyler called out after me. Running away again, huh? Loser. I ignored him. Sorry. What did you need to talk about? Nothing, really. She gave me a playful wink and shrugged. She had come back just to help me out. Thanks. That really saved me. Now let's head back. Emily and I walked toward the hotel. The silence between us felt heavy, so I finally broke it. I used to dance a little. Tyler and I were in the same class back then. Yeah, I figured as much. As we passed by a park, Emily smiled at a group of kids dancing together. I used to be just like them. Her eyes softened as she spoke, lost in nostalgia. I started learning dance when I was little. I competed in contests, even won a few awards. I was convinced I had talent, that I was going to go pro someday. but in the end, I was just someone who could dance a little. I wasn't surprised. Emily's eye for talent and her understanding of movement must have come from first-hand experience. And I knew all too well, dreams don't always come true. She stepped into the park and started dancing lightly. Her movements were part of our team's routine. With her tall, slender frame and natural grace, she moved effortlessly. Her posture never wavered. She didn't look like someone who had left the stage, but when she went for a turn, her foot didn't quite follow through. I practice sometimes, but I can't move like I used to. Still, you had amazing sharpness. It didn't look like you'd been away at all. Thanks, but I know my limits. It hit me hard back when I was transitioning from high school to college. I suddenly realized I had reached my peak. It was a shock, but there are a lot of people like me. And wasting time crying about it didn't seem worth it. There was no bitterness in her voice. She smiled as she scrolled through a group photo we had taken earlier. I love dance, but I can't stay on stage forever. So I thought, if I can't dance, I'll help others take the stage instead. That's why I chose this job. My dream now is to help the kids who believe in me make their dreams come true. Emily's gaze was warm as she looked at me. I had a feeling you used to dance. But I also knew you didn't want to talk about it, so I didn't push. Thanks for that. You don't need to thank me. But man, it's a shame. If we had met when you were still dancing, I could have seen you in action. She murmured as if picturing it. She was so strong. Even if she couldn't dance anymore, she'd have found a new dream and was chasing it. I had learned something important tonight. If you ever need help with work, I'm here. Oh, then I'll be sure to work you hard. As we discussed final performance adjustments, we walked back to join the others. A week passed. Emily and I worked together, fine-tuning the choreography, adjusting steps based on what we observed from other competitors, and making suggestions to the team. Some wondered, why is Ryan involved? But no one interrupted us. Our intensity spoke for itself. We were the final team to perform in the championship. The judges would be exhausted by then, so we focused on making sure the performance held their attention until the very last second. And then, the day arrived. After finishing the stage rehearsal, I returned to the waiting room a little late, only to be met with chaos. A staff member shouted, "The costumes are missing." All of them. For a moment, I couldn't process what I had just heard. Before leaving for rehearsal, all the costumes had been neatly hung on racks. But now, they were nowhere to be found. Everyone searched the room, turning it upside down, but the costumes were gone. No one had taken them outside. Who could have done this? There were 10 dancers. It was impossible to prepare new outfits now. Right now, everyone was just wearing colorful t-shirts. We couldn't go on stage like this. This is bad, someone muttered. On the monitor, I saw the first team already performing. The staff panicked, and some of the dancers started crying. A few people rushed off, looking for any nearby costume rental shops. As soon as the first performance ended, a staff member came to call us for preparation. But when they saw that we weren't even in costume, they were shocked. We explained the situation, but finding 10 matching outfits on such short notice was impossible. We had worked so hard for this. If only we had prepared spare costumes. One by one, people sank to the floor in despair. Emily clenched her fists, shaking with frustration as she looked around at the devastated team. My dream now is to help the kids who believe in me make their dreams come true. Her words echoed in my mind. For now, let's go to the stage. Maybe someone moved the costumes. I knew it was a false hope, but we couldn't just sit here and let the competition end like this. Clinging to the slimmest possibility, everyone hurried to the backstage area. But the costumes weren't there either. A third team was performing. We were next. It's over. I wanted to dance so badly. Tears welled up in their eyes as they cried out in frustration. Their carefully done stage makeup was now a mess. I couldn't let this be the moment that sent them down the path of defeat. "I'll buy us some time. Fix your makeup while you can." Everyone stared at me, dumbfounded. "Huh? Buy time? What are you even going to do?" "Nothing. But doing nothing is worse. No matter how ridiculous it looks, no matter if we get booed off the stage, you earned this spot. You deserve to be on that stage." The announcement came. Our team name was called. Everyone froze, staring at the stage. No one moved. "I'll wait for you until you're ready," I said. I turned to Emily one last time, then stepped into the spotlight. Unlike last week, this time I was alone. The audience erupted into murmurs at the sight of a single guy in a t-shirt walking toward the center of the stage. "What the hell is this? Hey, get off the stage. You don't belong here." Even the judges exchanged confused glances, whispering among themselves. As I stared at the stage floor, memories of all the training sessions flashed through my mind. I stopped walking and signaled to the sound crew that I was ready. A beat of silence. Then our competition track began to play. I started dancing. I performed the main dancer's choreography, and I could feel it. The atmosphere in the venue changed. The audience had been restless just moments ago, but now they were locked onto me. Since the routine was designed for 10 people to rotate as the lead, I improvised the transitions to make them seamless. Good thing I was wearing comfortable shoes, even if I was still just in a t-shirt. Instead of booing, the audience watched with fascination. The unexpected solo performance had caught their attention. They didn't fully understand what was happening, and that was fine. I was only here to buy them time. But then I ran into a problem. There was a part of the routine where dancers paired up and held hands. Dancing that part alone would look completely unnatural. I had hoped to stick to the original choreography as much as possible, but I might have to improvise. Just as I made up my mind, someone took my hand. "Emily, watching you dance made me want to join in," she said. She, too, was dressed casually, yet she still stepped forward to stand beside me. "How's everyone doing?" I asked. "They're okay. Your dance gave them courage. They're fixing their makeup and warming up." We recreated the choreography, which was meant to be performed by the entire team, just the two of us. Emily matched my improvisations, helping to make up for the missing numbers and keeping the performance dynamic. "Emily, you're still an amazing dancer. Hearing that from you gives me confidence." And then, as we finished our do section, we reached the moment where the full team was supposed to form a circle. At that instant, the others rushed onto the stage in their colorful t-shirts. As if it had all been planned, they seamlessly took our places and continued the performance. Emily and I moved to the back, taking on supporting roles to highlight the 10 dancers at the front. The 10-minute routine came to an end. They struck our final pose perfectly in sync. We had given it everything we had. Of course, given the circumstances, we were probably disqualified from the official rankings. But at the very least, this would be a good memory for them. I just hoped that this experience wouldn't break them, that they wouldn't give up on their dreams. The audience's reaction went beyond anything I had imagined. People in the crowd stood up, clapping and cheering loudly. Whistles rang out. Arms shot into the air. Voices shouted in excitement. A standing ovation. The students, experiencing this kind of overwhelming praise for the first time, stood there in stunned silence. A moment later, Emily and I bowed. The others followed suit, still in a daze, before stepping offstage. Back in the waiting room, we gathered around the monitor. All the remaining teams were waiting for the results to be announced. Our 10 dancers were among them. I wasn't expecting us to win. Our registered lineup was different. We performed in t-shirts. I had started the performance solo. There had to be more deductions than I could count. But they had fought with everything they had. No matter the outcome, they could be proud of what they did. At least, That's what I thought, until our team's name was called for first place. We all exchanged looks, unsure if we had heard correctly. Our eyes snapped back to the monitor on stage. Our team had the same bewildered expression. The host repeated our name, and then both the waiting room and the stage erupted into chaos. "No way. I can't believe it," Emily whispered. I couldn't believe it either. But while Emily and I were frozen in shock, the other staff were pumping their fists, shaking hands, and hugging. The students were crying, embracing each other, overcome with emotion. I stared at the award ceremony, still in disbelief. And then the waiting room door swung open. A man locked eyes with me and immediately walked over, one of the judges, the owner of a major American theater company. "Your dancing was absolutely incredible." He grabbed my hand, speaking excitedly. I could only catch bits and pieces of his rapid English, but I understood the gist. He was deeply moved by my performance. Even though he knew it was an improvised act, the quality of it amazed him. He asked for my name, and when I told him, his eyes widened in shock. "Wait, you're Ryan Asterisk. The Ryan? I can't believe this. Meeting you here, what are the chances?" "What's he saying?" Samantha, standing behind me, asked. He's happy to meet me." "What? Why?" "Apparently, he knows who I am." For several years, I had been a professional dancer. I was based in the U.S., performing on countless stages alongside various artists, and was even called a dance prodigy. It had been the most exhilarating time of my life. But in my mid-20s, I was diagnosed with a heart condition. I spent 3 years in and out of hospitals, undergoing surgeries. After that, I was forbidden from doing any strenuous physical activity. If I wanted to stay alive, I had to give up being a dancer. Without dance, I felt like I had nothing left. But I still clung to this world, working at a dance school, even if just on the sidelines. The judge expressed his hope that I would return to the stage. But during the performance, I had already felt my chest tightening. I had taken my medication as soon as I left the stage. I knew I could never keep dancing like before. But maybe I could chase a new dream. Like Emily, I could find another way to be part of this world. A thought crossed my mind: choreography. For the past week, Emily and I had worked tirelessly on the routine. We adjusted the choreography to minimize strain while maximizing impact, and the dancers had brought it to life. Without choreography, there is no dance. When I voiced this idea, the judge immediately handed me his business card. He wanted me to work with his theater company. Everything was moving so fast. But of course, good things never come without complications. What the hell was that performance? Before I could react, someone grabbed my shirt collar. Tyler. His team had placed second. He must have come straight from the awards ceremony to find me. How the hell did a failure like you win first place? This whole competition must be a joke. I know you think you actually deserve that win. Your team only won because of the gimmick. Hey, wait. What's that? One of our students suddenly pointed at Tyler's bag. A red string peeked out from the partially open zipper of his sports bag. Hold on. Give me that bag. What the hands off my stuff? Tyler tried to resist, but Emily snatched the bag from him with ease. She unzipped it. Inside, crammed tightly together, were our team's missing costumes. What the hell is this? Emily stepped forward, cornering Tyler as he instinctively took a step back. A crowd had started to gather, blocking any chance for him to escape. You? Did you really steal our costumes just because you were afraid of losing? I couldn't lose to you. Tyler shouted, his frustration boiling over. Unlike some dance school hobbyists, this is my career. My life depends on this. If you're so scared of losing to a so-called hobbyist, then you have no right to destroy the hard work of others. Emily's words cut through the air like a blade. Tyler clenched his fists, his face twisted in anger. but there was nothing left for him to say. Security and event staff, alerted by the commotion, stepped in and took him away. Later, I heard what happened. Because of his actions, his team's ranking was lowered due to unsportsmanlike conduct, and he was forced to take responsibility. He was expelled from his team. A scandal like this at a world-class competition quickly spread throughout the industry. Naturally, no other group was willing to take him in. And after that, his name simply disappeared from the dance world. Meanwhile, I took that business card and flew to America. I started a new chapter of my life as a choreographer, working with various artists. At the same time, my former dance school invited me back as a coach. Every time I returned to Japan, I made sure to visit and teach. Emily, too, gained recognition after the competition. Her reputation as a dance producer soared. Like me, she now traveled back and forth between Japan and the US. Next year, I was asked to choreograph for a team that Emily was producing. Our work brought us together often, and somewhere along the way, we become close friends, meeting up outside of work just to spend time together. You know, all of this happened because you took that first brave step forward, Emily told me over and over. But the truth was, she had been the one who made that step possible. I had learned something invaluable. Effort doesn't just sharpen skills, it moves people. If our hard work could inspire others to chase their dreams, then that alone made it all worth it. Failure wasn't the end of the road. Every success, every setback, it all led me to where I was today. And to prove that, Emily and I would keep moving forward. Feet firmly planted, chasing our dreams. I take it that you are a single parent. You probably don't have a lot of money. All right, just wait your turn. Back up, back up. Upon observing that I was a single parent, the bank staff treated my son, Tyler, and I with contempt when we went to take out some cash. We were then forced to wait for hours, which made the situation worse. If we withdraw the $8 billion we have deposited, we could shut this place down, right? Tyler said in a whisper just as I was about to lose my rage. We both smiled mischievously at that. Shirt is my name. I live with my husband, Rick, and our recently kindergarten-aged son, Tyler. When we were in college, I got to know Rick. I was studying for law school at the time. Rick, a student at T University's medical school, was likewise occupied with his clinical rotations. We both went to a singles party to take a break from our studies, but we had no idea how this chance meeting would shape our lives. That day, we clicked and exchanged numbers. We were studying together at the library by the following week. The tuition was reasonable because my university was a national one. However, I wanted to take the bar exam, so I needed to save money for law school. Rick's wallet wasn't exactly full because he was too occupied with medical school to work much part-time. The majority of our dates were studying at the library or at each other's houses, with the occasional lunch break in between. However, I treasured each day I had with Rick. It was 4 years later. I passed the bar exam in my last year of law school. Additionally, Rick passed his medical licensing exam. After our training sessions ended, we were married. We were both working for a while, him as a doctor and me as a new lawyer. We couldn't even keep our house organized because of how demanding our careers were. It was a mess all the time. I wanted to provide healthy meals for Rick, but I was unable to do it with my job alone. Our trash bags were frequently stuffed with empty lunchboxes and frozen food packages. Rick never complained, regardless of how much I neglected the housework. He was too busy to assist, though. Rick had to work nights as a doctor, but I didn't frequently stay up all night. We seemed to have been running together since our days of rigorous study. We were fortunate to have a child 10 years into our marriage. "We don't want you to quit," said the legal firm where I worked. "Even if you are on leave, we will continue to pay your lawyer registration fees. Please return after childcare is under control. But Rick also hoped for this, deeply engrossed in his arduous work. I therefore made a decision to halt my legal profession. I stayed in the law firm until my cases were resolved. After that, time began to pass shockingly slowly. At last, I could concentrate on Rick, our house, and our soon-to-be kid. Our lives changed from being busy to having time to take care of our home. Our child was born, and we named him Tyler. Tyler was a bright kid. By the age of 2, he could read and write all letters in the alphabet. By the time he started kindergarten, he could read an analog clock and would start reading the news on the computer with Rick. On our way to and from kindergarten, he would explain the news to me. I was astonished by his rapid growth. But Rick just smiled and said, "I think it's normal." According to Rick's mom, Rick was the same as a child. But perhaps the peak of my life was those peaceful years spent as a stay-at-home mom, raising young Tyler by Rick's side. When Tyler was 5 in winter, our family went skiing. It was a beautiful sunny morning, perfect for skiing. But in the evening, just as we were about to head home, the weather turned bad. As we were hurrying back, Rick said, "I see something like a hat in the snow off the course. Someone might have fallen. I'll go check." I had a bad feeling. But knowing Rick, who worked in emergency medicine and always put saving lives first, he couldn't just ignore it if someone was in trouble. So I didn't stop him. If only I had insisted he stay. But it's too late for regrets now. As Rick approached the snow pile, a fierce blizzard hit, blocking our view. I was doing my best to protect Tyler in my arms. And when our vision cleared, Rick was nowhere to be seen. The rescue team arrived quickly. But Rick, who had lost his breath and body warmth to the snow, had already passed away. I couldn't even cry. Under the fearfully blue winter sky that had cleared again, I stood frozen, holding Tyler. Rick, who had just been laughing and skiing with us, was no longer there. All the memories from when we met until now raced through my mind like a flickering slideshow. Rick was earnest, intelligent, and always straightforward. In front of my stunned self, Tyler did not cry. Dad tried to help the person who lost their hat, right? In front of the lost hat, 5-year-old Tyler understood everything. Yes, he did try to help, I whispered, lost for words. I was tightly hugged by Tyler. "Mom, I will help you. I will protect you." From then on, a huge void opened in my heart. Tyler, true to his words, stayed by my side, smiling, helping out with his little hands, and gently asking, "Are you okay, Mom?" He tried his best to protect me. But I realized that it was my responsibility to truly protect young Tyler. Now, without Rick, who was always with us, it's my duty to protect Tyler. This realization filled me with an indescribable fear of the unknown future. Rick, having been a doctor, left us with some inheritance. But Tyler was only 5 years old. I couldn't predict how much money would be needed in the future. Considering his intelligence, he might want to become a doctor like Rick, but the inheritance wouldn't cover the cost of medical school. I wished I could immediately return to working as a lawyer, but balancing a full-time job while raising young Tyler seemed daunting. I wanted to at least work part-time to earn some living expenses, but my health had deteriorated since Rick's passing, making even that impossible. And I felt anxious seeing our savings account dwindling day by day. "Don't worry, Mom. I will protect you. I'll grow up fast, and it's all going to be okay." Tyler's reassuring hugs were my only solace, since he quickly read through any book I gave him. Constantly buying new ones would be expensive. So, we frequented the local library, allowing him to read plenty of books. By the time Tyler graduated from kindergarten, he had become proficient in writing foreign languages typically learned in high school. Learning foreign languages expanded the range of books he could read. Tyler, devouring books of all genres, had become much more knowledgeable in various subjects than I, who only knew about the law. Amid a life at rock bottom, having lost my loving husband, and with no one to rely on, Tyler's growth was the only ray of light. Years passed, and Tyler turned 9. His passion for reading books remained unchanged, but there was a big change in my life. When Tyler entered 4th grade, I returned to work as a lawyer. I had always loved my job and had a decade of experience from my 20s working tirelessly. A month after returning, I got back into the swing of things and was able to handle my work. By this time, my health, which had often faltered since losing Rick, had finally stabilized, and the nightmares that woke me up in the middle of the night had lessened. Still, balancing my job as a lawyer with household chores was challenging. I was barely managing the bare minimum, like preparing meals and doing laundry for Tyler. I had no time for myself. My makeup routine was just hurriedly applying foundation in the office bathroom in the morning. At night, I often fell asleep without removing my makeup, and my wardrobe was limited to suits for work and a few old casual clothes, making me look much older than I was. I even declined a college reunion invitation, feeling embarrassed about my current state. I returned home with a heavy heart that day. When I opened the door, I found Tyler sitting in front of a brand new computer, his eyes sparkling. "Tyler, what's with the computer?" "I won this. Remember the quiz show I participated in on TV? I kept it a secret until the broadcast, but I won, and this computer was the prize. Cool, right? You won? You should have told me sooner. That's amazing, Tyler, just like your dad." I hugged Tyler, who was sparkling with excitement. This computer marked the beginning of a new phase in Tyler's life. A year had passed since he received the computer as a prize from the quiz competition. Since that day, Tyler spent almost all his time at home on the computer. At first, I helped him with the operations, but that was only for a day or two. Then, he started buying specialized books from bookstores, rapidly absorbing knowledge. He was always quick at reading, and now that I was working, I could afford to buy him many books. Tyler's study desk quickly became filled with books on programming languages. I had only focused on law, so I knew nothing about computer development languages like Java or C++. Seeing Tyler so immersed and shining in this field made him seem almost otherworldly to me, as if he wasn't my own child. "Rick, Tyler seems to have inherited your knack for the sciences." I caught myself talking to the night sky sometimes. Tyler would even read my old college books. Thinking about his future, I no longer felt the terror I had right after losing Rick. Tyler would carve his own strong path in life and society. I was sure of it. Every year on Rick's death anniversary, we always visited his grave, and this year was no different. While walking to the bank to withdraw money for Tyler's new computer, a man suddenly bumped into me from behind, causing me to nearly lose my balance and fall. The man was wearing an unusually glossy long coat and had a tacky oversized watch that he was flaunting. He then callously threw a comment over his shoulder. "Move it. You're in the way." "What they?" I almost blurted out a complaint but held back. Remembering that today was Rick's death anniversary, I wanted to avoid any trouble or foul language. "Mom, are you okay?" Tyler asked, coming over. I hugged him tightly. "Thank you, I'm fine. How about you, Tyler? That must have startled you." "Yeah, maybe that man was in a hurry, but I can't forgive him for bumping into Mom." "Oh, you're so kind, Tyler. But don't worry, I'm okay." "Welcome. How may I assist you today?" When we arrived at the bank, we were greeted with such a warm smile that it blew away the unpleasant feelings from earlier. The receptionist, Cindy, as her nameplate read, listened to our needs, quickly prepared some paperwork, and handed us a number. "We're a bit busy today, so there might be a short wait. Please have a seat on the sofa over there." We sat down on the sofa provided. "Wait, Mom, isn't that person?" Tyler exclaimed in surprise when someone was called up to the counter. "Oh yeah," I muttered in disbelief. The man who had bumped into me earlier was sitting there. "Give me those papers," he said. The bank clerk at the counter received our documents with an attitude that seemed like he didn't even consider us as customers. "I'll proceed with the procedures. Just wait at your seat." After scribbling on the documents, he handed them back as if shooing us away. I really wanted to complain, but I held it back. "It's Dad's death anniversary today. We shouldn't argue." I said with a smile to Tyler, "What? So you are a single parent and a son, right? People like you guys should wait their turn." I was shocked to hear such unbelievable words coming from behind. It was indeed the voice of the bank clerk from earlier. Tyler was also standing there with his mouth gaping. "Tyler, don't worry about it. Let's read a book." Patting his shoulder and taking out a book I had brought, I noticed Tyler looked visibly upset, but he nodded and started reading. However, no matter how long we waited, our number wasn't called. At first, I thought it was because it was busy, but as I looked around, other customers, who seemed to have arrived after us, were being called and served. I thought it might be a misunderstanding, but it wasn't. An older man who had arrived just after us and sat on the sofa next to us finished his procedures and left. Then, a businessman-looking man who had arrived after we started reading also completed his procedures and left. "Mom, let's be good today." If it were Dad, he would have waited quietly. Tyler stopped me as I was about to stand up to complain. "You're right," I replied with a wry smile, opening my book again. It's ironic that I, a mother, was being reminded by her son. And so, we waited for nearly 3 hours. Even Tyler, usually so patient, started to get irritated as our number still hadn't been called. "Tyler, I'll go ask. Don't worry, I'll be polite. I won't do anything Dad would dislike." Tyler thought for a moment and then nodded. "Excuse me, we're number 57. We've been waiting for almost 3 hours. I approached the counter, trying to keep my irritation in check, and asked as politely as possible, "What? 3 hours? So what? It's busy. People like you, poor folks, are always last." The poor folks. "Yeah, you're a single parent, right? You probably don't have much money anyway, so just wait and go back to your seat." "What? You're changing the order of service based on that?" I was about to retort, forgetting the promise I made to Tyler when suddenly I felt a tap on my back. Turning around, there was Tyler grinning broadly. "Mom, what happens to this bank if we withdraw all the $8 billion we have deposited here?" "What are you talking about? $8 billion? Dream on, kid." I couldn't bear it anymore when they started mocking Tyler. Just as I was about to speak out, suddenly the branch manager burst out of the back room with great urgency. It seemed like Cindy had relayed the message, as I could see her emerging from behind the branch manager. "Jimmy, what are you saying?" The bank clerk looked startled. "Jimmy, how dare you speak to our customers like that?" "But, branch manager, these people err. These people are Miss Johnson and her son, who have been favoring our bank with their business." At that moment, Jimmy showed an expression of unmistakable surprise. This lady, Miss Sherry Johnson, I had no idea. I mean, Miss Johnson, I am deeply sorry for the rudeness of our staff member, Jimmy, and for the long wait for your transaction. Please come this way. He ushered us into a private room. "We are terribly sorry for the inconvenience." Upon entering the room, Cindy brought us warm green tea and small sweets, and a staff member, other than Jimmy, promptly proceeded with our paperwork. In fact, there is a deposit of $8 billion in this branch under my name. Of course, it's not money I earned as a mere lawyer. Tyler, utterly fascinated by computers and app development, struck gold with a game he and his friends created. I had established a company under my name where the money was deposited. Tyler's teammates, mostly graduate students and freelance engineers, played a role in the development, but it was Tyler, still in elementary school, who handled the main part of the development. App development doesn't end with the release. It requires maintenance and frequent updates, which Tyler primarily handles. Whenever simple legal knowledge was needed during development, he would read my law books to address it. Tyler, even as a child, has completely relieved me of financial worries and even gifted me with dreams. He mostly manages the deposits by himself. However, since bank transactions are mostly done online, we seldom visit the bank in person. Moreover, I usually stop by the bank in the middle of work, dressed in formal suits. Today, we wore casual attire, so that's why Jimmy didn't recognize me. Perhaps he is new to this branch or simply not used to seeing unfamiliar faces. Regardless, it's outrageous and highly disrespectful to treat customers differently based on their appearance. We requested the branch manager to retrain Jimmy for the sake of other customers and then left the bank. At the cemetery, I talked to Rick's grave about today's events with Tyler. Unlike me, who tends to complain, Tyler always remains calm and slyly supports me. I also talked about the game app again, which I've been doing every visit. Rick, Tyler's game. It's been half a year since its release and is still gaining subscribers. Every time we release new skins or items, they have the best sales record. Tyler wrote the main codes for all of them. But I can't draw, so Mary does all the art, Tyler said happily. He loves computers and books so much that it makes it difficult for him to make close friends at school. Working with his older teammates, helping each other to create something, must be especially enjoyable for him. He told me, "I can't discuss coding with my school friends, but with my development team, I can talk about even the most complex topics." He's even studying a new language now. As I reported with a smile, Tyler happily waved his hand and said, "Dad, I'll definitely protect Mom. It was really hard when you left us, but it made me want to work harder to protect her. That's why I thought of making an app and got motivated to write better code and study more. I feel like I am who I am today because of you, Dad." Tyler declared in front of Rick's grave, "When I grow up, I want to help people who lost their partners, just like Mom did." He studied hard in middle and high school, maintained top grades, and went on to the School of Pharmacy at the same university as Rick. He passed the bar exam and the medical licensing exam while still in university. Tyler passed the national medical exam at the same time as his graduation. His achievement of passing both the bar and medical exams garnered media attention, sparking speculation about whether he would pursue a career in medicine or law. However, it seemed he had always planned to continue with the company he started. The company, which he founded in elementary school through the development of a game app, had been mostly inactive after middle school. But he decided to restart it in earnest after graduating from university. He then made a conscious effort to employ single parents at his company. I also left the law firm where I worked and joined Tyler's company as the legal affairs manager. I was thrilled to use the knowledge and experience I had gained over the years as a lawyer in my son's company. Moreover, due to the company's policy of employing many single parents, overtime work was basically prohibited. This allowed me to return home on time every day and slowly take care of household chores. Although I love legal work, having time to relax and focus on my personal life also seemed necessary. About a year after Tyler restarted the company, he mentioned that Cindy, the woman who had helped us at the bank that day, had come for a job interview. It had been over a decade, but the moment they met, both instantly recognized each other with a surprised, "It's you from that time." Apparently, the rude bank employee, Jimmy, was fired after the incident. Cindy, who had been harassed by Jimmy and had already submitted her resignation, also left the bank. Since then, as a single parent with a daughter, she had faced many challenges. But those days finally came to an end. Cindy, always considerate and capable, became an indispensable executive secretary at Tyler's company. Tyler, Cindy, her daughter, and I go out for dinner once a month. When the alcohol starts to hit, Tyler often says, "Truth is indeed stranger than fiction, and the most exciting." It seems that Tyler, who never had any romantic rumors, had even invited Cindy's daughter to dinner. She also seemed surprisingly interested in him. Life is truly unpredictable. Today, as I headed home in the sunset after work, I spoke to Rick in my heart. Rick, please continue to watch over Tyler and me. Then, it felt like the first star twinkled in response. Is there any money in your account at all? Sally clearly thought I had no money based only on my appearance, even though it was something that could be easily verified. Are you certain that you're all right? You realize you don't have to put on a front. I had never experienced such treatment at a bank before. Enough already. Everyone, from young children to elderly people, should be served by banks. How can this type of conduct be tolerated? You may appear like a child, but you're lecturing me like an adult. Adorable. But truly, you don't have any money, do you? Give up acting. I have frequently been undervalued due to my appearance, and I usually don't mind. It's different this time, though. They mistreated me the last time. They also made me wait for 5 hours today. This is the outcome of all that. I'm officially out of patience. I'll see to it that they take the lesson. Julia Gibson is my name. My age is 55. I own a clothing business. It's a somewhat unusual business that specializes in selling apparel with universal design. Simply said, designs that are usable by as many people as feasible, irrespective of age or disability, are referred to be universal designs. For instance, the rough ridges on the side of shampoo bottles or scissors that are equally effective for right-handed and left-handed individuals. Instances of universal design include those. Even though knowledge is still somewhat low, it is slowly becoming more well-known in this age of growing variety. My own experiences are the reason I founded this business. Due to a hereditary problem, I am small, prone to gaining weight, and have limited finger mobility. Life was challenging because of these obstacles. They made it difficult for me to make friends in primary school, and I briefly quit attending. Teachers thought I was just lazy because there was no such thing as school refusal back then. However, my parents did something wonderful because they recognized how I felt. I was sent to study overseas by them. My mom and I moved to the Scandinavian countries after they conducted research and discovered that they had developed welfare systems. Naturally, there were difficulties adjusting to a new environment and the language, but I was free of relationship concerns and received a wealth of worthwhile experiences. Even now, I cherish my time overseas, my parents' guidance, and their support. I currently manage a business with its main office located in Scandinavia. However, I established a branch in the U.S. a few years ago. I now divide my time between the United States and Scandinavia. Having a business account in the United States seemed like a smart idea when I set up the branch, but I was unsure which bank to use. My dad helped me make my decision, and I went with Starry Skybank. My dad was able to obtain a lot of assistance because he knew the branch manager at the time. I chose to create an account there after hearing that story. I recall that the branch manager at the time was an absolutely amazing individual who taught me a great deal. I thought I would ask for advice now that I was going to open another branch abroad and would be sending a significant sum of money there. I assumed the branch manager would come up with a brilliant answer. Rather, I was going to have a bad experience. I called to schedule an appointment since I didn't want to bother the branch manager with an unexpected visit. Thank you for calling. This is Sally from Starry Skybank's Mayfair branch. Sally answered the phone, and I told her I wanted to meet with the branch manager. Then, she responded with a half smirk in her voice. Are you talking about how many years ago? That person was the former branch manager. That's hilarious. It was my first time speaking to her, yet her tone was shockingly rude. Well then, I would like to stop by and introduce myself to the new branch manager. Could you connect me to them? When I made this request, she responded with another half laugh. There's no way the branch manager would meet with someone they don't even know. You understand that if you thought about it. She didn't even fully listen to what I was saying and just kept telling me to show up during business hours if I wanted to consult someone. Realizing this conversation was going nowhere, I reluctantly said I understood. Though it was just a phone call, I couldn't shake the unsettling atmosphere. When I opened my business account here, I hadn't encountered this kind of toxic vibe. And honestly, how could a bank tolerate an employee who handles calls like that? With these doubts in mind, I decided to visit Starry Sky Bank the next day. The accountant responsible for managing the account offered to go instead, but I wanted to get a sense of the atmosphere myself, so I decided to go in person. When I arrived at the bank the next day, I looked for Sally. Although I could have just greeted the branch manager and discussed my concerns without involving her, I wanted to see her face. Little did I know, this was the first step toward disaster. "Excuse me, my name is Julia. Is Sally available? I spoke with her on the phone yesterday." I told this to the employee who welcomed me, and they went to call Sally. I watched the scene closely when the employee approached someone who seemed to be Sally. Sally turned to look at me. When Sally noticed me, her expression instantly shifted to one of someone who had spotted an easy target. "Julia, thank you for waiting. What can I help you with today?" After speaking politely for a moment, Sally suddenly seemed to realize something. Then, with a sly grin, she changed her tone and said, "What brings you here today? Did you come with your mommy or daddy?" It was clear that she had judged me based on my appearance and adjusted her tone accordingly. Standing at less than 4'7", I sometimes get that kind of treatment when walking down the street. I'm used to it, so I didn't particularly mind and began speaking. "My name is Julia, and we spoke on the phone yesterday. Since I heard there's a new branch manager, I'd like to introduce myself and also consult about sending money overseas from my business account." Considering I'd mentioned transferring money from a business account, she should have realized I was at least a working professional. On top of that, while I may be short, my face clearly shows the experience of someone who's lived a full life. Surely she couldn't seriously think I was a child. And yet, Sally didn't change her tone. "Oh, is your dad the business owner? You know some pretty complicated stuff, like sending money from a business account." She kept speaking to me in a condescending manner. "Well, let's see if you can understand. The branch manager is out today, working outside the office, so they're not here today. They'll be here tomorrow, so can you come back then? And next time, bring your mom or dad with you, okay?" Well, I'm already at an age where I could be called middle-aged. How long are you going to keep talking to me like that? Thinking her tone was incredibly rude, I gently pointed out my age. "Oh my, I'm so sorry about that. I thought you were a child. Anyway, the branch manager isn't in today, so could you come back tomorrow?" I figured staying any longer would only ruin my mood, so I told her I'd return the next day and prepared to leave the bank. As much as I thought her behavior was unacceptable, I've experienced far worse in my life, and something like this doesn't faze me. For now, since the branch manager seemed to be in tomorrow, I decided I'd talk with them and settle everything then. The next day, when I arrived at the bank, I heard Sally talking loudly with her coworkers. "Do you think that little robot cat will show up today? I can't wait." A robot cat? Is there some kind of event happening? I wondered, but I quickly realized they were talking about me. I'm short, on the heavier side, and my fingers don't move well, making my hands a bit rounded. I was shocked by how cruel her comments were about my appearance. Sally noticed me and smirked as she approached. "Julia, thank you for coming. You're here to see the branch manager, right? I'm so sorry, but they're currently in a meeting, and it might take a while. Would you like to wait?" I had time today, so I decided to wait. "Okay, how long do you think it'll take?" For some reason, this question seemed to irritate Sally, and she reverted to the same tone as the day before. "Have you ever worked before? There's no way to know when a meeting will end. Maybe it's a bit too hard for you to understand, huh? Just sit here quietly and wait until they call you. She spat out her words and walked back behind the counter. I started to regret coming here, wondering if yesterday's experience hadn't been an illusion after all. If I had let the accountant handle it, this probably wouldn't have happened. But I really wanted to meet the branch manager in person, so I had no choice. With that thought, I waited. But no matter how long I waited, it didn't seem like I'd be called. I also noticed Sally glancing at me occasionally and laughing. Every hour, I asked the other employees about the branch manager, but they all seemed to defer to Sally for some reason and kept telling me, "Please wait a little longer." At this point, I was determined to see this through to the end. But after 5 hours had passed, I realized waiting any longer was a waste of time and approached Sally. "Sally, I've been waiting for 5 hours now. How much longer will it take?" "Huh? Don't you have plenty of time? Just wait a little longer. You're the one who said you'd wait." Clearly, this person lacked the basic courtesy of not only a bank employee, but also a working professional. I was beginning to feel disgusted at the thought of keeping my business funds in a bank that employed someone like this. "I'm sorry, but I can no longer continue my relationship with Starry Sky Bank. I'd like to close my account." Huh. Sure, whatever. But do you even have any money in your account? Even though she could easily check, Sally had apparently judged from my appearance that I didn't have any money. "Are you really okay? You don't need to put on a front, you know. I've been to many banks before, but this was the first time in my life that I'd ever been treated like this at one. Enough already. Banks are supposed to handle money for everyone, from kids to seniors. How can this kind of behavior be acceptable? Oh wow, you might look like a kid, but here you are lecturing me like a grown-up. So cute. But you don't really have money, do you? Stop pretending. I've been judged by my appearance many times before, so something like this doesn't usually upset me. But this time was different. Last time, I was treated horribly, and today I was made to wait for 5 hours. After all that, this was the result. My patience had reached its limit. I decided to teach them a lesson. I made up my mind. Overwhelmed by anger, I went straight home without even greeting the branch manager and called my company's accountant. I had worried it might be hard to handle this in a day, but surprisingly, things went smoothly. I felt relieved knowing I wouldn't have to go back to that bank again. Last night, I was so irritated that I couldn't sleep much, but tonight I thought I'd finally be able to sleep peacefully. With that thought, I climbed into bed, feeling unusually refreshed. I ended up oversleeping and woke up after 10:00 a.m. panicking. I quickly got dressed and started getting ready to head to the office. That's when I heard an annoying buzzing sound coming from the living room. Curious, I went to check and found my phone ringing continuously. Since I never bring my phone into my bedroom while I sleep, I hadn't noticed it until now. Still, the sheer number of missed calls was overwhelming. When I checked the number, it was from Starry Sky Bank's Mayfair branch. It must be about yesterday. I thought and decided to ignore it for a while. The matter was already resolved as far as I was concerned. To stop the buzzing sound from annoying me, I switched my phone to silent mode. I couldn't help but feel grateful for my team at the office. I had anticipated that the bank would call my company once they realized the situation, so I had told my staff to forward everything related to this matter directly to me. Their compliance with my odd instructions was probably why I had so many missed calls. With gratitude for my team's competence, I headed to the office. Initially, the missed calls were only from the bank's landline, but now they were coming from a mobile number as well. When I listened to the voicemail, I learned that the branch manager from the Mayfair branch had called, but I continued to ignore it. At the office, the head of the accounting department was waiting for me. When I thanked him for handling yesterday's issue, he told me that the branch manager and Sally, the employee from yesterday, were at the office. I couldn't believe they'd actually come to my workplace. Apparently, the head of accounting had told them that I was too busy to meet today, but they insisted they'd wait as long as it took. For a brief moment, I considered letting them wait indefinitely, but having them linger wasn't ideal either. I quickly made my way to the reception room. Inside, Sally, who seemed completely unrepentant, and the visibly uncomfortable branch manager sat, exuding a gloomy atmosphere. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Mason, the branch manager of Starry Skybank's Mayfair branch. I deeply apologize for the unpleasant experience we caused you, Julia. He apologized deeply. Sally reluctantly apologized too. Oh, you're talking about yesterday. We've already taken appropriate measures on our end, so there's no need for further apologies. As for Sally, we'll handle her situation internally and send you an official notice later. Well, I think that's all for today. As I stood up to leave, Mason, stammering nervously, began speaking quickly. About the $10 million from yesterday. Could you please reconsider? Sally scoffed at Mason's words, her attitude mocking and dismissive. Oh, $10 million, right? I'll go ahead and close out all remaining accounts so we can terminate our dealings with your bank. Thank you for everything up until now. Closing the accounts? That would be a problem. Even though he said that, there was no way I'd continue doing business with a bank that employed such disrespectful staff. My decision is final. Now let's end this discussion here. My schedule is completely full today, so I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave. As I prepared to leave again, Sally made another absurd remark. Mason, come on. It's fine to let this company go. They're not even well known, and they'll collapse soon enough. Lending money to or dealing with such an unknown company is actually a risk. Besides, we've got my dad's influence to back us up, so there's nothing to worry about. Our company had never sought loans or financing, but Sally didn't seem to grasp that and continued to act high and mighty. Meanwhile, Mason was visibly sweating profusely, looking entirely flustered. I began to wonder why Mason seemed so powerless in front of Sally. Members of the Chamber of Commerce can use our bank without any issues, right? So it's all fine. Let's just ignore this woman. I mean, she looks like a childish old lady. There's no way she's capable of running a business. Look at her. It was clear that Sally had a real talent for mocking people based on their appearance. From her comments, I also learned that her father was the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. So that's where her brazen confidence comes from, I thought, finally understanding her attitude. Well, since we're done talking, I think. This was the third time I had attempted to end the conversation, and yet it still showed no signs of ending. As I stood up to guide the two out, Mason's phone started ringing. At first, Mason tried to ignore it, but the calls kept coming relentlessly. Instead of stepping outside to take the call, he signaled to me with his eyes and answered the phone. Excuse me for a moment. This is Mason. What's the matter? What? After speaking on the phone for a while, Mason let out a deep sigh and hung up, burying his head in his hands. At that moment, I could tell this was going to drag on. Sally, what exactly did you say to her yesterday? There was this childish-looking old lady, so I just kindly explained things to her like I would to a kid. What's wrong with that? Mason let out a long sigh, paused, and muttered in an unbearably low voice. Because of you, a wave of customers closed their accounts. Today alone, we've lost a third of our clients. What do you mean? How is that my fault? Mason showed her his phone, which was open to a social media site. There, a video of my interaction with Sally had been uploaded. Apparently, another customer at the bank had recorded our conversation and posted it online, where it spread like wildfire. Even though our faces and Sally's name tag were blurred, I was impressed by the incredible power of internet users. In no time, the branch name and Sally's identity were exposed. The comments were filled with speculation that the Maya branch would soon collapse, and there were even warnings to withdraw funds before it was too late. This misunderstanding had caused a flood of people to withdraw their money, further compounding the chaos. Yesterday, I transferred the $10 million in our business account elsewhere. I thought it would deal a blow to this bank. Honestly, I was satisfied just moving the funds and hadn't expected anything more to happen. But I never imagined it would turn into this. Whether by chance or misfortune, the punishment that fell upon Sally and the Maya branch was far greater than I had ever envisioned. It seemed Sally had received a call from her father, as she now stared at her phone in utter fear. "What are you going to do about this? This has probably already made national news." "I'm sorry, but I'll be reporting this to headquarters as well, and I can't guarantee what'll happen to you after this." "What? No way. Let's sue the person who filmed that video for defamation. If we do that, our customers will come back." Even at this point, Sally was still spouting naive ideas. True, since the video was filmed without consent, it might be possible to pursue legal action. However, the fact that Sally had committed such an outrageous act was already undeniable. Moreover, the bank itself would be held accountable for allowing this to happen. After all, the video showed that none of the other employees had attempted to stop Sally. At that moment, the head of the accounting department came over and whispered to me. Apparently, my father had seen the video. When I checked my phone, I saw multiple missed calls from him. I had completely forgotten to turn off silent mode. I called him back. "Julia, what's going on with that video? Seeing you being insulted like that is something I despise more than anything. The branch manager is here with me. Would you like to speak with him?" When I asked, my father said he would. I switched my phone to speaker mode. My father's anger was unstoppable. Mason could only apologize repeatedly, and it seemed Sally was finally starting to realize the gravity of the situation. "I'm sorry, but I'll also be speaking directly with your president. This is an insult to my business and my daughter." As he said this, Sally let out a slight chuckle. "You think you can talk to our president? Are you serious? There's no way someone like you could get an audience with someone so important." For a moment, I thought she might have been reflecting on her actions, but that response, "She's truly a hopeless case. It seems, young lady, you don't know who I am." Not that it matters, but perhaps the name Gibson Business Corporation might ring a bell. At my father's words, both Mason and Sally froze. Gibson Business Corporation. That's right. My father is the chairman of a major general trading company, one that most professionals in America would recognize. Since I was born, my father has been heavily involved in supporting people with disabilities, building welfare facilities, establishing educational centers for individuals with handicaps, and promoting accessibility projects. He also ensured I had a variety of life experiences. While I might have physical limitations, my father instilled in me the knowledge and skills to overcome them. Investments, business management. These are just a few areas he taught me. Thanks to him, I had accumulated significant wealth at a young age and was able to expand my business without relying on bank loans. Hearing that his daughter had been mistreated for her physical condition enraged him to no end. When I was younger, my father would often get angry over such things, but as I've grown older, incidents like this have become rare. Hearing his furious voice after such a long time brought back memories. I felt a bit embarrassed, thinking I'm 55 years old, though. Then I heard quiet sobbing. It was Sally. "I'm so sorry. When I was a kid, I was bullied for being short. See, you reminded me of my younger self, and I'm really sorry," she said, breaking into tears. "What an absurd reason. Sally, you shouldn't do to others what you wouldn't want done to you. Didn't your parents teach you that? Or did they tell you to mercilessly hurt others?" When I said this, Sally began bawling uncontrollably. Since I had accomplished everything I wanted to, I told Mason and Sally to leave, saying I couldn't let them stay any longer. I also informed them that further actions would be handled through my lawyer. Thanks to the bank president quickly holding a public apology press conference, they managed to retain some customers who were considering closing their accounts. However, my father's anger was unstoppable, and he closed his account with the bank. It turns out this was his personal account rather than a company account, which seemed to have spared the bank from bankruptcy. Mason was held accountable for neglecting his responsibilities to oversee the employees at the Maya branch. He was reassigned to an affiliated company in a rural area. Sally, unsurprisingly, was fired and is now unemployed. Since I filed a defamation lawsuit against her, she's currently trying to prepare settlement money to resolve the case. Given that the video went viral nationwide, it will likely be difficult for her to find a new job anytime soon. As a ripple effect, Sally's father also resigned from his position as chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. As for me, I continue my two-location lifestyle as usual. To my surprise, the video going viral boosted sales of my clothing line. While the video did show some embarrassing moments for me, it also turned out to be great publicity for my company. I never imagined such a response, and needless to say, I was shocked. What's more, a publisher who became interested in my life reached out with an offer to turn my story, and my parents, into a book. Thinking that my life might help others, I gladly accepted and am now slowly making progress on the manuscript. With the values my parents instilled in me and the resilience I've built to never back down, I plan to keep moving forward in life.